Got something a little bit different for today's daily Marvel Snap video. I was invited to play in a small invitational tournament for Marvel Snap players. We've got 16 players duking it out in a double elimination bracket for their share of the $3,000 prize pool. I've been clearing my way through the upper bracket, and today I've got a match against another content creator that goes by the handle of Freddy Babes that I think was my favorite / most interesting match that I've played in the tournament so far. I'm gonna go ahead and give you a quick rundown of my deck, Freddy's deck, and then walk you through my thought process as we play through the matches. Enjoy. When it comes to choosing a deck list for a tournament, well, I'm always looking for something that's going to be powerful and competitive. I'm also looking for something that I enjoy playing. I think a lot of competitive players often underestimate how much their enjoyment of the game that they're playing is going to have an impact on the actual quality of their gameplay. I personally don't find optimizing the best decks in a format like Thanos or Shuri in this current one to be satisfying, and I really don't like playing mirror matches such as Thanos against Thanos or Shuri against Shuri, and this bounce deck was one of the decks that was most successful in my Climb to Infinite, and I just love playing it with it. It's got a ton of cards that let me feel smart as I pick my cards up and put them back out in the right sequencing decisions, and I feel like I have a lot of meaningful choices in every game of Marvel Snap that I play with it, making it a very satisfying gameplay experience for me. I also think there's a good bit of value in working outside the box in a card game like Marvel Snap. The round of the tournament that you're going to be watching was open deck list, but just because my opponent knows the 12 cards that I'm bringing to the match that we're playing doesn't mean that they're going to have proper experience playing against that deck. And this deck is pretty different than a lot of other decks in Marvel Snap. The way that Beast and Falcon allow us to manipulate priority by pulling our power off of the board and giving us the flexibility to redeploy it really allows us to dictate the flow of a game of Marvel Snap in a way that's frequently profitable for us, and more specifically in a way that a lot of my opponents aren't going to understand how to react properly if they don't have a lot of reps in against the deck that I'm playing. Now, my opponent, Freddy, was also playing something that's a bit off the beaten path for their current Marvel Snap format. In some ways, it kind of looks like a Shuri-less Shuri deck. We've got Zero and Red Skull going on, along with Maximus and Cosmo, but Freddy's deck also has really key interactive cards in it, and I think those are the most important cards and how this matchup's going to play out. Most notably, Killmonger as well as Shang-Chi are cards that I'm going to be thinking about a lot over the course of the games that I'm playing, and that managing priority that I mentioned when I was talking about the bounce deck a second ago is going to be really critical in the games that you're about to watch play out. If I am able to make sure that Freddy is going to be flipping his cards up first going into the final turn of the game, it allows me to deploy things like Darkhawk or a demon from my hood in a way that Shang-Chi and Killmonger are not going to be able to interact with it. Let's go ahead and jump on into the games and break down what I mean with some action in front of us. Our first game gets underway, and the immediate location that flips up is great for us. Shuri's Lab doubles the power of something every time it enters it, and with our deck being able to return things to our hand with Beast and Falcon means we're able to leverage that double up from Shuri's Lab more than one time. Now, a consideration when we're playing out the starting cards here, because you'll note that I play Hood into the center, and then we're going to see Black Widow play to the left here momentarily. This is because you'll note that Freddy is playing Cosmo in his deck list. Typically, when we're playing the Beast bounce deck, we want to put all of the cards that we're going to be looking to bounce in the same path, so Beast can pick all of them back up, but Cosmo, being known in my opponent's deck list, changes that dynamic a little bit. I don't want to get all of my cards that I'm looking to bounce into the same path, because I don't want all of them to get shut down by a copy of Cosmo. Also, by splitting these up, if Freddy chooses to proactively play out his copy of Cosmo, he's forced to pick or choose which of the two he wants to be disrupting here. Eternity range flips up, and honestly, our hand is pretty good to go here. We quickly play out the Bishop. There's very rare instances where you don't want to play Bishop on the third turn of the game, but in general, Bishop is our best turn 3 play, and we just want to get that down ASAP. Our hand is pretty well set up here at this point, and we go ahead and we snap to raise the stakes. Freddy hasn't played anything out yet, the X Mansion hasn't flipped up, but we're teed up here with Falcon and Beast to really start leveraging this Shuri's Lab and push the gas pedal down to making this Bishop be a force to be reckoned with on this game board. What I talked about a moment ago, forcing Freddy to make a decision as to where he wanted to deploy this Cosmo, comes into effect here, and he commits the Cosmo to the center path, meaning that I'm not going to be able to pick that hood back up with a copy of Beast. That being said, Falcon does bounce everything on the board. A 1-drop here is easily one of the best draws in our deck. It allows me to fill this path up and start bouncing. We think about the Falcon here for a second, but then I take note that it is the 4th turn of the game. I'm not realistically going to have time to play these cards out, bounce them with Falcon, bounce them with Beast, and bounce them with Falcon again. The game's going to be over before that happens. That being said, Beast making everything 1 cheaper means I will have time to pick these 3 cards back up with Beast, then redeploy the 1-cost things for free and pick them back up with Falcon for a 3rd time here. We do that Demon kick up to 12, Korg kick up to 4, and then Beast pick all of these back up to our hand here again. Freddy doesn't have much of a start here, still just the Cosmo in play. Now, noteworthy that Falcon's going to pick things up from all around the board here. We have to think very carefully about our sequencing. Bass is going to set the power of everything in our hand to 3, so we want to do that before we pick our things back up. And this is a big play. You'll note here that I'm playing Falcon out on the right side of the game board because my goal was to not have priority going into the final turn of the game. And because I'm already pretty far ahead on the right, that was where I'm most likely to be able to remain ahead, and I felt that Freddy was more likely to play into Shuri's lab than the Eternity range, and if Freddy puts even 3 points into the Shuri's lab here, once Falcon picks things back up, I'm going to go ahead and be ahead. Sorry, Freddy needs to put, the Widow's going to be 8, so Freddy needs to put 5 points into the Shuri's lab, which I felt was likely. And Freddy makes a play. Widow gives them a bite, cutting off one of their draws. Our Bishop continues kicking up here. Korg is now a 0 energy 8 power card. Demon is now a 0 energy 24 power card. Bast kicks my Darkhawk up to 3 base points of power, plus all of the cards in my opponent's deck between draws that have been cut off and rocks. Aero is getting kicked up to 14 here, and we've done exactly what was my goal of this game, which is have a ton of stats to deploy here in the final moments, while also ensuring that I didn't have priority. Freddy can Shang-Chi my Bishop on the right, but if they have their copy of Killmonger, that's not really going to do anything for them, and I'm going to likely very easily win the left and the center, and honestly, the 8-power Korg might even win the right if they stay in this game. Freddy retreats later, and that makes sense. Retreating later is basically always optimal in this format. Round 2 is quickly underway. We've got a strong hand again to start here. Bast sets the power of everything in our hand to 3, giving us an increase in points for the board. And Bast is especially powerful with Mysterio. Bast makes it so not only is the original Mysterio 3 power, but each of the Mysterio clones have 3 stats as well, making it effectively 9 points of power for just 2 resources at a base level. Hood and Korg get played out into the center path for us here on 2, because in a perfect world, we're going to be setting up Beast to pick all of these back up to our hand, so that way this Bast can give Darkhawk plus 3 base power, and Bast can turn this Hood from -2 into a +3. As we head into the 3rd turn of the game here, we have what's likely the best draw in our deck. Bishop on 3 is one of the best things we can be doing. It's also noteworthy that even though Freddy and I both have 2 points of power in play here, Freddy won the coin flip at random to have priority here, meaning even if I didn't draw Bishop, playing Beast into the middle is a little leery into the potential of Cosmo to lock that path completely down. While Cosmo is at the forefront of my mind when it comes to thinking about this Beast play, Killmonger is another reason to favor the Bishop over the Beast on turn 3 here. Now we have kind of a decision to make. How are we going to go about getting stats onto this board? This Darkhawk isn't particularly large. We put a single rock into Freddy's deck, and Hell's Kitchen notably drew each of us a card, meaning this Hawk is likely only going to be 6 stats at the end of the game. This means we need to lean on Bishop, our Demon, and potentially our Chavez on the last turn of the game to get our stats going on the board. So we're starting things off here by deploying Demon along with Beast to get +2 stats onto the Bishop, but more importantly, this also makes the Demon free, meaning we can bounce it with the Falcon later. The snap here on my part's a little aggressive, but I feel that with the Bishop set up to go and the Mysterio set to all 3s, we could be in a reasonable spot, especially considering the fact that Freddy's board hasn't really been developed at all yet this game. Opponent snaps back here, which gives a little bit of a pause. I wasn't really bluffing with this snap. I felt like our hand was strong. A quick double check on the deck kind of reaffirms here that, hey, the Darkhawk is in fact only going to be 6 points worth of stats. And Freddy puts 10 power into play, which this is almost assuredly why they snapped back, right? They're putting an incredible amount of stats into play here, developing their board in a way that I wasn't aware was about to happen. Now, Daredevil here gives Freddy perfect information, and we have a lot of choices to make. The Angela off the top, I think, makes it so what we're going to be doing is a little bit more scripted here. You'll note that this Demon retains its cost reduction through the bounce from the Falcon here. So what we're setting up here is the final turn of the game, we're going to get to play out a 6-power Darkhawk, 3 Mysterios, and a 6-power Demon that's 0 resources. Our ending board state here puts our Bishop up to 8, which notably allows him to dodge a copy of Shang-Chi going into the final turn of the game. It puts our Angela at 2 points of stats and gives us 2 more units here inside of Xandar. Something notable from the opposite side of this board here is that 0 was Freddy's last play on turn 4, meaning I don't really have to be worried about anything like Aero going into this 5th turn because that would be 0'd out. So Red Skull is the most likely thing Freddy can do, and that ends up in Necrotia, I believe, which makes sense. Putting your single largest thing into Necrotia makes it most difficult to beat there. Part of me was wondering here what combinations Freddy could be going through. Honestly, the timer could just be him always running out the rope like this, but it could also signify that perhaps he has a yellow jacket to clear the 0, and perhaps is thinking about doing a yellow jacket into an Aero here. With the Red Skull being the play into Necrotia here, and our Darkhawk being only 6 stats, it feels like winning Hell's Kitchen and Xandar are the 2 things we need to be doing here. Xandar's a pretty easy slam dunk being up 11 there and having another location. The Mysterio and other things we play out are going to pump the Bishop a good deal and get us really far ahead there. The question is, can we beat Freddy inside of Hell's Kitchen? So Spider-Woman is the big swing here in this moment. For Spider-Woman can put Freddy up to 20 points of stats in the center, and most notably, she shrinks Beast and Angela 2 points, leaving us at 3. This Darkhawk is unfortunately only 6 points of stats, as well as the Demon, meaning 6 from the Hawk, 6 from the Demon, and then 4 from Angela, puts us only to 19 in the center, meaning we're losing to the Spider-Woman in the center. I go through a few different permutations here, but ultimately I end up retreating this on a 4-cube loss, which I think is the correct thing to do. Our opponent is very likely to have Spider-Woman, and there's other combinations of things that beat me if I play to beat the Spider-Woman in the center. It is noteworthy here as we look at this. Had I played the Demon plus American Chavez in the center, we could have gone ahead and beaten a Spider-Woman played there. However, playing to beat Spider-Woman in the center would have left us vulnerable to Spider-Woman plus a 1-drop on the right side of the locations here. And I think taking that risk into 8 cubes is simply not worthwhile, especially when you consider the fact that Freddy is more likely to have a 1-drop because he picked one up from Hell's Kitchen earlier in the game. Round 3 kicks off, and again, we have Bass in our opener, and we also have Bishop here as well. Sakaar has 2 really good hits here for us. Getting Bishop into play on turn 1 for free is incredible, and Darkhawk getting down for 0 resources would also be great. Because 2/3 of these Sakaar hits are good for us here, I go ahead and I push the snap button nice and early. I think pressuring people and raising the stakes, especially against a reactive decks like Freddy, when he doesn't know how his draw is going to line up into our draw yet, has a lot of value for us in this kind of matchup. The stakes go ahead and get raised, Bast pops off, and the Sakaar hits the worst possible outcome for us here in Falcon. That being said, it also only drops a Yellow Jacket into play for Freddy, so all things considered, feels like a pretty even Sakaar here. We drop Iceman on the left, and we go ahead and hold the Bast here. Holding the Bast has some value if we peel something like Angela, Black Widow, Mysterio, or Hood off of the top on a future turn. And we know that our turn 3 is going to be the Bishop, because getting Bishop down ASAP is almost always something we want to be doing in this deck. Iceman flips up and tags a card inside of Freddy's hand while they deploy Daredevil to the board here for us. We're rewarded by holding our Bast here for a little bit with a card that would love to get pumped up by it, although obviously we're not doing that this turn. Getting Bishop down ASAP so it can start cranking up is huge. Beast is easily the best draw in our deck here on the 4th turn of the game, especially when you consider the fact that we drew Black Widow on the turn prior, letting us use all of our resources here and really get disruptive. Remember, each of these Black Widow triggers is not only cutting Freddy off of a resource, but it also adds 2 points of stats to our Darkhawk at the end of the game. Because we have priority going into this 4th turn as well, we're not worried about Killmonger or Cosmo on this left side path disrupting our disruption. As we head on into the 5th turn of the game, the thing you generally want to be figuring out with this deck is, on turn 6, are you playing America Chavez out, or are we playing a different combination of cards? This game is definitely a game where we are not playing out America Chavez. We want to be deploying Darkhawk alongside Mysterio, and most notably, this Iceman also costs 0 energy, so we can play that out in the final moments as well. We play things out initially here, and then I kind of think through, what am I doing on my 6th and final turn? And I realize that if I bounce the Bast back to my hand, I'm actually not going to be able to play it back out. So I want to sequence my Falcon in a way that I'm not bouncing the Bast back, because I wanted stats being left on the board. I think I actually made a mistake on this turn here. You'll note that I'm playing out all 4 of my cards in this moment, which notably puts my Bishop up to 9 power, which pushes him into Shang-Chi range. I think the correct play was likely leave the Iceman in my hand and give up that 1 trigger to give Bishop extra equity against the powerful interactive card we knew my opponent was likely to be having. I definitely want to play the Widow out to disrupt their draw and make my Darkhawk bigger, and I definitely want to play the Bast out because Bast is going to turn this Mysterio into 3 power things on that last turn for us. Even with perfect information here, Freddy's plays end up not being that strong, in large part due to the fact that he had priority here. So Spider-Woman is 16 points of stats here in the throne room for Freddy, but that's all she does. Her on reveal trigger doesn't get any value going on here. Now, we have a giant mess of stats to put into play. This Darkhawk is 13 power. All of these Mysterios are 3 power. The Iceman is an additional 3 power. Normally, one of the best things Freddy's deck can be doing on the final turn of a game like this is deploying Aero plus a 1 energy play to kind of lock us out, but Mysterio is really good at allowing us to play around Aero. We're putting 5 cards into play here on the last turn, meaning it's just too much of our board filled up for Freddy to be able to pull them around in a way that's profitable for him. Freddy goes deep into the tank here, I assume contemplating if his disruptive elements are going to be able to either cut through my bishop or get around the flurry of stats I'm likely to play to the board, and in the end he concludes that he likely cannot, and he retreats, tying this score up 6-6 as we head on into the 4th round of the match. We head on in to round 4 here, and we have an all right hand to start here, a disruptive element, one of our bounce engines, now 2 of them, and a payoff in Darkhawk. It is noteworthy that Monster Isle is definitely a location that favors Freddy deck, since he has access to Shang-Chi to clear out our 9 power card, and we do not have anything to disrupt his. This hand is really missing another payoff or a way to make our existing payoff better, and we spike that here on the 2nd turn in Korg. This Korg, along with our cards that are going to be able to bounce back and forth into our hand, means that our Darkhawk is going to be relatively large, and with this in mind, I think we go ahead and we press the snap button, asking Freddy, hey, do you like your hand yet, before he knows the full depth of how much we're going to be disrupting him over the course of the subsequent turns. Freddy thinks about it for a moment and decides his hand is not currently strong enough. He's going to bounce out while the getting is good. As we head on into the 5th round, you'll note that it says high stakes here. High stakes means that the default amount of cubes is 2, and if someone snaps, it kicks it up to 4. TVA, meaning the turn is ending on the 4th turn of the game, is so good for our deck in general, and it's excellent for this hand. We have Hood with Beast already teed up, meaning we're going to have 12 power worth of stats from 2 demons to play out over the course of this 4-turn game. The high stakes round is really good for this snap here. It means if Freddy wants to try and bounce out of this game that's likely good for us because of the TVA, it's going to cost him 2 of his 5 remaining cubes. He thinks about it for a good long while here and eventually decides this is the game to make his move and stays in. We're playing for at least 4 cubes here, which is almost all of Freddy's remaining life total and all of mine remaining as well. In a longer game that wasn't about the TVA, I would set up more cards on this left side path before beasting them back to my hand. However, this game has a shelf life, and most notably, we just drew this Falcon here, meaning if I pick this Hood up this turn, next turn I can play it back out and Falcon it back to my hand potentially, giving us no longer having that -2 on the board while having 2 demons to deploy. Mirror Dimension in the middle's not really relevant here. Potentially, if it copies TVA, a second copy of that location doesn't really matter. Lizard makes a lot of sense considering Freddy stayed in for our snap. I would expect him to have some of his better earlier plays here in this moment. Like Maximus, I think, is another card that's likely to show up along with Zero, since Freddy felt confident enough to wager an additional 2 cubes for this game. I mentioned earlier that typically we always play Bishop on the 3rd turn of the game. That being said, when the game's only lasting 4 turns, this is one of those exceptions to that rule. You want to make sure you don't lock yourself into hard and fast heuristics like always play Bishop on turn 3, because you're going to give up equity not recognizing when you need to go against what's typically the ideal play to be making. I get rewarded here for my sequencing. We knew that Maximus was likely to be a card that Freddy had access to since he stayed in on my snap for the TVA, so it was very important that I played Hood as my first 1 energy card in the previous turn, because if I'm only able to return 1 of these to my hand, I'd much rather have Iceman stay in play than not. This is the last turn of the game. Freddy is going to be losing this game, or I'm going to be going down to 1 cube if I lose it. I'm feeling pretty good here though. Most notably, Freddy's Maximus has given him priority going into this final turn, meaning the 1 card that I'm really worried about out of Freddy in this moment, Killmonger, is not a card that can really hurt me because it's only clearing a single Iceman off the board, leaving my 12 power worth of demons to be just fine. The Hood here on the left may seem a little bit odd, but it is noteworthy that filling that left side path does shrink their Lizard by 3, so it's potentially worthwhile for doing that. We reassess and play back out and forth here, thinking about the Black Widow and the demons, and ultimately we go ahead and lock this in. I chose to play the demon on the right side as opposed to the center for fear of this Killmonger happening like we have. And this demon is just so many stats. I tie Freddy on the right while we each win a single location, but I'm up by a whopping 10 points on the left, which makes me the victor for this match and the series. I'm currently 4-0 in this tournament. It's being played out asynchronously over the course of a few weeks. There are still 5 other players in the lower bracket that are going to be battling it out to see who gets to come up and meet me in the grand finals to try and take the crown away from me that I'm in a good position to be able to take home. If you want to see how my other matches or even this one played out with some professional commentary over the top, I'm going to go ahead and link 983 Media's YouTube channel below where you can find the videos of this round that I just covered, as well as the other 3 matches that I played. Those were against Cozy Snap, Specimen, and Casanova to make my way to this grand finals through the upper bracket. Those matches are going to be playing out over the course of this week after the balance patch hits, so all players, myself included, are going to have a chance to submit new deck lists. I'm going to get to submit 2 decks, one for the upper bracket and one for the lower bracket if whoever comes up and beats me from the bottom, but whoever comes up for the bottom is going to have to beat me twice on just 1 life since I am still undefeated through the top. This type of content is very different than the normal highlights that I do here. The pacing is different. The formatting is different. It's a tournament. It's not ladder matches. I'd love feedback in the comments down below if this is something you enjoyed. I haven't invested a ton of energy and resources into playing in tournament type things, but this one being played out asynchronously seemed like a good opportunity to test the water. And if there's a desire for content like this here on the channel, I might make a point to play in some more tournaments over the course of my Snap career because it is fun. They're just a little bit time consuming if they're not async like this one that I'm currently playing in. As always, thanks for watching all the way through to the end of the video. If you enjoyed it, snap the like button to help it reach some more people. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel. I post Marvel Snap content 7 days a week. I'd love to see you back again. Enjoy the rest of your day, folks, and hopefully patch soon.